Camera's on. Good evening. It is Monday, June 13th, and I call the Maple Plains City Council special meeting to order. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm looking for a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Cahill,
Second.
second by Francis. Any further discussion? All in favor of adopting the agenda as is, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. First item of business this evening is a hearing to consider the revocation of conditional use permit at 5060 US Highway 12, and I'm going to turn that to staff.
Yeah, I'll go first. Mayor and members of the council, on April 25th, the City Council at a workshop discussed the ongoing compliance violations of the conditional use permit at 5060 US Highway 12. And during the workshop, it was noted that the property owner has failed to bring the property into compliance following multiple attempts and fines being levied against the property. And staff was directed to schedule a hearing to consider revocation of the conditional use permit. That's how we're here today. On May 4th, the property owner was provided notice of tonight's conditional use permit revocation hearing. That's in their packet. The City Council's agenda packet contains that staff report and exhibits. I'm going to provide the City Council with the process for tonight's hearing. Mark Cultus will make the staff presentation to the City Council. The property owner will have the right to make a presentation to the City Council and may, if they choose, present evidence, their own evidence. There's no right of cross-examination. Members of the public may speak to the council. I put some guidelines up with a 3-minute time limit. The subject matter has pertained to subject matter at hand. Attempts have to be made not to be duplicative of what other members say. And then the council will have the opportunity to discuss the matter and ask for additional information or testimony. The City Council will then consider if there are violations of the conditional use permit conditions. If there are, then we're looking for direction to be given to staff to prepare a revocation resolution for formal action at the next City Council meeting. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mark.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Council. As Scott had mentioned, Council directed staff to put together the information related to this property. I'll give just kind of a brief overview, and then I'll go into as much or as little detail as required or requested by the council. The initial conditional use permit for this property is granted in 1985, or to this business in 1985. There's been a series of amendments. If you go back and look at the timeline that was provided by the city and kind of gauge through, the owners changed the business in different ways over the course of the history of this permit. With that, what we're focusing on is really where we are today in terms of the conditional use permit and what's applicable to today. So over the course of that 1985 till today, that conditional use permit was amended 6 times by the city. The most recent amendments occurred both one in 2015 and then again amended in 2016. The amendment that occurred in 2016 is the current conditional use permit that exists for that property. And what I mean by that is it's got the current conditions. And so when it was amended in 2016, the city changed and amended some of the conditions relating to that CUP. And so the 2016 permit is the one that is applicable today, and it's the one that we have reviewed the property against. And I'll walk through what those look like. And so as relates to tonight's hearing, Scott alluded to the direction for revocation. City has applicable regulations. So 153.140 provides revocation provisions in the city's zoning ordinance, which talks about what the city council can consider and how we go about removing a conditional use permit, and that's really what you're talking about tonight. So with that, the 2016 conditional use permit that was granted, so I know some of you were here, some of you were not, really an attempt to try to right-size the conditional use permit with the type and current business operations of Collision Corner at that time. And so as some of you know, the city was in the process of trying to bring that site into compliance for several years, and ultimately got to a point in 2015 where we agreed that there was some necessary modifications needed to the conditions of the then acting conditional use permit to try to help the business owner accommodate how they were operating the business at that time. And so the city granted a 2015 approval, but then after a year of not bringing that property into compliance, the applicant came back, had some changes that they wanted to make to the site relating to a paint booth and some other things that they were thinking about. And so we amended it again. And the 2016 amendment is what we have today on the books, and it's what is the basis for any kind of review or enforcement against property. And so the primary conditions in that 2016 conditional use permit were to, one, capture how many vehicles could be parked on the property. And the city tried to do that by breaking the property down into some specific areas. And there's an exhibit in the packet, and I'll show you as we go through kind of what those parking areas are. But we had the Boundary Avenue parking area. We had Boundary Avenue on-street parking. We had an area in front of the building. We had an area west of the building. We had an area behind the building. And then we had for sale parking spaces, which were on the Highway 12 side. And so we try to break down the parking configuration to one, accurately represent what was permitted on the site, and then two, to be able to more easily administer where those parking spaces were being allocated, and then how, making it so that both the city and the owner could easily determine if they were compliant with provisions. And so that was done kind of as a give and take between the city and the owner. So when we landed, what we landed on is 77 spaces that were broken down in accordance with the table that's provided in the packet. I won't go through that, but you can see where those spaces are permitted. We also then, with the conditions of that, said that parking and storage are permitted in designated areas only according to the site plan. And so we have a site plan. It was approved as a part of the overall CUP, and I think it's way down, so I'm gonna stay on this for right now. But that site plan provides the framework for all of the various improvements that were supposed to be completed by the owner, and also to identify where the various parking areas are on the plan, and what those spots actually look like, what the striping actually shows. So there's a site plan now that was associated with the CUP. With that, we also said that there would be no parking of vehicles on Boundary Avenue associated with the business. So the use of kind of that parallel parking on Boundary was no longer permitted. We were trying in this CUP to capture everything on site and in the designated areas only. As some of you may know, and I know some of the things that the city had talked about is that at one point there was parking kind of all up and down Boundary, and it really wasn't very well organized. And then we also had a lot of kind of damaged and junk vehicles that were being stored in that area. So we tried to bring those all inside the property itself within the boundaries. So no parking on Boundary outside of the areas designated. The city identified that there was a need to landscape the northeast corner of the site. And so really what we were talking about is this corner over here that has the most visibility from the adjacent residential neighborhood, not only the new neighborhood, but also the properties that are on Main Street. And so there was landscape that was to be installed by the property owner along that corner. Building and street lighting pursuant to the site plan. We had identified site lighting both on the building and on the site itself. No parking signage designated on the site plan. And then we also, through discussions with emergency services, identified the need to keep and maintain a emergency vehicle access route around the perimeter of the building. And really what we had looked at is coming from this location around the front of the building, and then being able to go on the west side of the building and then on the north side of the building back out, keeping that route open and clear. And then that route was supposed to also be striped and signed. Blacktopping the for sale area as designated on the site plan. I think most of you know that there's an area along the fence on Highway 12 where cars are parked for sale. We identified the number and the location of that on the approved site plan, but noted that it couldn't be dirt, grass, gravel. It had to be paved. It was supposed to be bituminous, and so that was also shown on the site plan. And then all parking spaces, both interior and exterior, so also the space on boundary, were supposed to be striped in accordance with the city standards. What we found with the ongoing violations, there's kind of two aspects to it. One is the day-to-day just visible parking counts that have been done over the years by the city, and looking at those various areas and how they break down, and just simply going out and doing counts, noting that those counts are not in compliance. They weren't in compliance on 6/6. I broke that down in the table that's provided. But the city, kind of on an ongoing history, has been doing counts both with the owner and on our own, trying to just understand compliance. And I think it's been noted many times that is not, the number of vehicles on the site was not in compliance, and or the number of vehicles in the designated areas in accordance with the table were not in compliance. You can see the 6/6 numbers that we took. The applicant was exceeding the number of cars in all but one of the areas. The for sale area was actually within the tolerances that were applied. Parking and storage were permitted in designated areas only. We noted that there was parking of vehicles occurring directly west of the main entrance, or the main side of the building. Primarily, they're parking in this area right here that was limited, and there was more cars in that area than what was permitted. We also noted that there was cars parked on Boundary Avenue outside of the designated areas, which would be in this location, kind of to the north of their driveway on Boundary. The required landscaping in the northeast corner was not installed or was not present. If it had been installed, it's no longer there. The required rear storage and parking areas were not striped or have not been striped. The blacktop for the for sale area has not been put in, and the permanent no parking signage has not been installed in accordance with the plan. And then lastly, the emergency vehicle public safety access route as designated. It's not shown in terms of it's not been striped and provided, and it wasn't available at that particular time on the visit that was there. This is just a snapshot that shows a couple of these areas. So this area here in orange was the area that was to be paved on the site plan, and then you can also see from this area the designated emergency access aisle that would go around the perimeter of the building. This does give you an idea too of the spaces that were required to be striped. So just gives you a snapshot, but it shows that designated area. This was the landscape plan that was incorporated into the conditional use permit. We have pictures also that just shows that area had not been, that landscaping had not been installed at the 6/6 inspection. So that's the 2016 CUP, and those were the applicable conditions. Those are included in the resolution of that CUP. And as Scott mentioned, staff was directed to kind of put this timeline together for council's consideration. The city did go out to the site on May 5th and went out again on June 6th. And I did, I'm not sure if any of you did go by it today again just to take a look. But I did look again just for the improvements, primarily the kind of hard improvements that need to be done. Those haven't been completed. I have photos of the car count, but it really wasn't applicable, so I didn't actually physically count, but I have that if the council would like to look at that or talk about that. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on kind of any of this history, any of the conversations or discussions on the 2015, 2016. I will note that the applicant did come back to the city in 2017 and 18. We looked at a possible amendment, looking at a paint booth being added or kind of an expansion of the building, but ultimately that wasn't done. And so where we are is still on that 2016 conditional use permit amendment. So.
Any questions for staff? Okay.
Madam Mayor, if there's no questions can you hear? I found out from the last meeting I had to be closer. So you can hear me okay? Good. Because I'm so soft-spoken. So now that if there's no questions for staff at this time, we can invite up the the property owner or the property owner's representative to make a presentation to the council. So at this time, if you guys want, if you want to come up and make a presentation, speak to the council.
Good evening. My name is Kurt Kroll from Collision Corner. Thank you for all being here, dealing with me again regarding this. It's been a little trying, but I'm doing as much as I can do trying to clean up what we have going on down there. The last few years has been a little difficult, but we're getting through it. We did do some of the improvements that were on the conditional use permit. The landscaping was one that you brought up. It did die. We did put it all in like we said we're going to, and it did die. I just want to get that one off the plate. I don't know what we're going to do back there because it's so wet. We are over on the car count continuously. We realize that. And we have been trying for the last few years to try to get a grasp on it and control it better. But with the pandemic and parts and with COVID, with minimum employees being able to work, like I said, it's been a challenge. I'm asking for probably 30 days to come back with all this and see what we can do to bring it in compliance. There's not much more I can say except for try to do it or do it to keep the conditional use permit, to keep the business going down there. So.
With the council's permission, may I ask a couple of leading questions from Mr. Kroll? I'm here as a friend and kind of representative. Like bring board points up.
Okay. I mean, it's his presentation, and so if you are part of with him with regard to the presentation, there's no issue with coming up. But I would ask that you do it at the microphone.
Kurt, you have a secondary property.
Do you mind?
Can you
just
please-
up to the
yeah.
microphone, please, and maybe state your name.
State your
I'm
name.
Kurt Bjorklund, friend
Okay.
of Kurt's and customer of Collision Corner. Kurt, could you talk about a secondary property you have that might
We do have a
play into
secondary
this?
property that we've been, if you did a car count today, we're closer. We've been moving cars that we own over to that secondary property. But that secondary property is not well secured or lit. And we are installing security cameras, just motion cameras. We lose the catalytic converters on our cars when we bring them out there because of the security situation over there. And we can't bring customer cars over there. We can't take the customer car off our premises and put them at a secondary lot. But we've been moving those over to the secondary lot, trying to thin out the parking. Yes, we have been doing that.
Kurt, what, in a bad night, bad winter night, multiple collisions, can you control the vehicles that come into the facility?
We cannot control the vehicles that come into the facility. They come in at night on tow trucks, either wrecked or cars that are mechanically stalled out on the road. They just come in and drop them off. And they drop them off on Boundary mainly. That's where they're dropping them. We tried to clean that out. I think the conditional use permit is for employee parking. And what happens is they come in at night and get dropped off, that they're stalled or damaged or whatever. We just have a really difficult time trying to control that. And then not having the room in the back, we turn around and leave them there, which creates a problem with a parking issue.
And in the middle term, how are those problems of overcrowding resolved? What do you do with those vehicles?
Well, we let them sit until we find a spot in the back and get more cars out that are being worked on, and then move them to the back. So, I mean, I'm looking at my diagram here, and yes, it looks extremely congested from the top view, from a bird's eye view. As far as the paving goes, my paver that I've used for the last 37 years down there, we had a discussion in April, and he said wait till July because of the ground, the dampness. He said you wait till July, and then he'll come in and pave it for me. We didn't do it for the last 2 years because there's just been a lot of different reasons that he couldn't get out to do that. But we do have an appointment in July with him to have that done. The paving for where the cars go, for the for sale lot.
That's a good follow-on. How has COVID affected your business? And have you been able to find the help you need to make some of these changes, not only with third-party vendors, but internal staff?
COVID has affected every service business or every business one way or another. And yes, we've had a really, really tough time trying to get parts for cars that are undrivable, that are actually wrecked and undrivable. So they had to sit at our lot. And that's been for a strong 18 months. A strong 18 months. We've had cars there, multiple cars that were damaged that were waiting for parts for 4 to 6 months.
What's the normal waiting period?
It used to be maybe a week. That's what it used to be. So it's been difficult trying to get the parts to fix the cars, to get them off the property. And when cars start laying around, you're not generating any revenue. They're just tying up space. And employees have been a problem too. I have my core staff, but when they get sick, you lose them, and then you got to wait 10 days or whatever the wait period was at the time, and we were losing multiple people multiple times. So it's been difficult. I know this has been going on for years, but it's been difficult.
Have you been able to find help now?
No. The lower end where we need help is in the cleanup end, and to organize and keep everything in line. No, there's been we've had ads in for over a year trying to hire extra help, and it's not going well.
Do you want to talk about cleanup requirements, especially with respect to the paint booth?
As far as cleanup?
Yeah. I mean, you can't leave a paint booth untended, unclean, right?
Right.
It's got to be done daily.
Oh, yes. Someone has to do it. Yes. That's one of the bigger techs doing that job versus a younger one learning the ropes, if that's what you're asking.
And it's hard to find
It
people
is.
to fill those
It
slots.
is. It's hard to find people to work in our industry, or a lot of industries right now. There's just the workforce just isn't out there. We don't have the staff in the last 2 years that lower staff that always wanted to work, the college kids, the high school kids, or even the kids out of VOTEC, we just haven't got that staff that we used to fall in our lap and we would carry them for a few years until they learned the ropes and either stay with us or move on.
Switching gears a little bit, have you attempted to put signage up?
For
No parking or restricted?
Well, we had
parking?
them, the wind blows them, so we actually have heavier weights to put on the bottom of the signs now. But when we do put them up, the wind will take them and push them into a car. We've seen them go right across the parking lot. And I don't think we can permanently put them in the ground. I don't think that was an option here. I think we had to make the ones that you could move around. And they just weren't heavy enough. We thought we had them heavy enough, but we've actually had to fix 2 cars over the years that the signs blew into. So we just stopped doing that, which was probably the wrong thing at this point. So we do have weight to put on, weld them on, and make them heavier so the wind won't blow them around. And as far as the fire lane, we did open up the fire lane a month ago. We didn't stripe it because obviously the weather wasn't allowing any striping, but we did. You can drive around the complete building now, and that was opened up. So we're trying to make some improvements to come in compliance with the conditional use permit. But we just don't have the manpower to do it maybe as quick as we would like to see it done, or you would like to see it done, but we are trying.
Could you set some kind of timetable for the council? So they could be assured that this...
I would say by in the summer we would have it all done, because I can't control the people that are going to do the paving and the tree removal, and maybe do some kind of a landscaping in the backside there that they were just talking about, that we did do, but we lost all the trees back there. The groundwater, the water table's too high. We have to switch gears and put something else back there. So I would say that I would like to see a little bit more time trying to come in compliance and comply with the conditional use permit versus just revoking it. We've been there 37 years. I think the city actually, the community likes us, having us there.
I see non-committal counsel, but I know, being a customer, Kurt Kroll has helped me out in emergencies when I've been far away from Maple Plain. He's an amazing mechanic, and the services he's provided are without parallel of any mechanic I've ever worked with. It's more than that. He runs a public service. He helps customers far beyond what any typical mechanic would do. And I think it'd be a shame if Maple Plain executed and revoked this conditional use permit without giving Kurt a chance to bring this into compliance. I know it's been years, but it's been challenging, and it's particularly with COVID. I think the council would be well within their discretion, and also sort of as a nod to the needs of the community, to give Kurt a little more time to comply with the CUP. I think we're done.
I think we're done. Thank you.
If-
Thank you.
And if there's any questions for Kurt at this time in the council? If not, we can always he can always be recalled to come up.
Then.
Mayor, and now that if we've had staff speak and now the property owner, if there is anybody from the public that wants to talk, I think it's a good time to have them come up.
At this time, I'll open up the podium for the public to come and speak. As stated earlier, you will have 3 minutes. I'd ask that you be respectful and to try to not be as repetitive as possible, and make sure to introduce yourself. The podium is open.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just leave out, at this point now, it's just up for the council with discussion. Staff is available to and I myself are here to talk, to help you out. We can gather more information if you need to figure out what direction the council wants to go here.
Great. Thoughts or questions from council?
I will.
Okay, Councilmember Fay.
I'd like to thank staff. They put together an enormous undertaking, 180 pages of packet that kind of documents past 35 years of Collision Corner and the conditional use permits. It truly painstakingly depicts what has transpired over the past 35 plus years, and more importantly, what has really transpired over the last 10 years, because I think it's been over the past 10 or 12 years that the city truly has tried to work with Kurt and Collision Corner to continue to modify these CUPs in order to allow his business to run and run according to how his business should operate. And but on the same token, I spent 5 years on the Planning Commission, in the past 5.5 years on City Council, and I truly hear the same plea. I just need a little bit more time. Just need a little bit more time. I need 30 days, I need 60 days, I need 90 days. And I just want to ask, have we forgotten what happened in 12 and 14 and 15 and 16 and what's transpired over really the past 5 years through 3 different mayors and 3 different administrators, the communication, there's been a lot of avoidance, deceit, you pulled a conditional use permit that included a new building with a paint booth. You applied for it and then you pulled it. Then you built the paint booth anyways, without city approval, without a building permit. You just built it right in our face. And you make us look like we are non-business friendly, and we are not. And I just don't know what, if you give us an avenue to extend this out anymore. I'm very concerned about it, Kurt. I really am. And my 2 cents for right now, but I'm very, very concerned that you seem to be blaming this on employees and COVID for the past 2 years, and this has been going on for decades. And I don't know if I don't know if in full faith I can agree that you're going to act on what you say you're going to act on. Have you read the packet?
Like for the plan store, it's a big packet.
It's damning. It was hard to read. It really was. It's all right.
Other comments or question from council?
Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember DeLuca.
I've been on council now for coming up on 10.5 years. And this is one of the most painful things that I have experienced. Considering revoking a CUP for a business in town is not something I take lightly. Kurt, your work for this community is noted. I've been here during most of these CUPs, most of the discussions that you and your business have asked for and that we have worked with. And I totally understand the last couple of years. But this isn't about another day, another week, another month. It's been 10 years. That business has not been in compliance with any conditional use permit in the 10 years that I've been on council and on the planning commission. I think it'd be honest to say that there probably wasn't a moment in time when you've been in compliance. I made this statement at the 2018 conditional use permit. Is the business that you're trying to run an appropriate business for that footprint of land? And I never got an answer at that point. But I do believe the last 3-4 years have proven to me that the answer to that question is no.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll kind of echo some of the last comments. But when we first in April discussed this, to Mike's point, it made me feel really uncomfortable that we were considering revoking, because we want our businesses to be successful. And this was one of the first things we discussed when I joined council 6 years ago. And then to see 30 years of it, that's what kind of cemented it in my mind. And I think, to Mike's point, there was a phrase by a previous administrator that said, the success of your business has outgrown this spot. And so I think it is a successful business. People like it, but I do think maybe it's not the appropriate spot for it anymore. So I do think we also have to consider our actions and how they affect other businesses. And so we need to be consistent in our enforcement. So as hard as it is, I am leaning towards the revocation as well.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll just add that with being only here less than a month, I did read through the packet, and there appears to be a history of the non-compliance, and with it covering so many years, that a responsible business owner would have made sure that it would have been taken care of and not let it get to be 10 years and the same conversation is happening. I've been a customer down there, and like we've said, the business, I believe, has outgrown the footprint. It's hard to find a place to park. Knowing how people pull in and out of parking spots, you don't want to get dinged while you're at the repair shop. That I do think we need to do something. And if it's revocation, unfortunately, I think that's the way we need to go.
I as well share many of the same thoughts. The business is far exceeded the footprint that is there. The work obviously is exceptional, and like you said, people are waiting and dropping things off. Unfortunately, I as well, it was the first city council meeting I was appointed to in 2015, and the developer of the Meadows came in and spoke and talked about how it was affecting their development. The neighbors came and spoke. And unfortunately, it's been year after year, and I understand since 20, we've all had to deal with COVID, and especially the businesses. But we have extended and extended and extended, and this has been going on since 16, and even longer. And I as well feel like our hands are tied, because you've stood at the same podium and told us countless times, you know, please give me 30 days, please give me 60 days, I'll do this, I'll do this. And actions speak louder than words, and I haven't seen those actions follow through. So I as well, this is, had the goosebumps reading the packet, and this is not an easy conversation by any means, and I as well feel like our hands are tied, and in representing the other businesses and homeowners around the business, unfortunately feel like we do need to move forward.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, excuse me. I think there were some questions and comments made towards the property owner. If they do want to have a chance to speak again, I don't see that being a problem.
Okay. Mr. Kroll, would you like to come forward? Do you have any comments?
Or as representative too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Bjorklund, sorry.
Yeah.
Both of you.
I'd just like to note that I'm relatively new in the community and familiarizing myself with the record, but deceit, Mr. Fay, is a strong word, but I understand your opinion. What can I ask the council, what is the consequences, sort of operationally, of revoking the CUP? What happens if?
I'll turn that over to staff.
Mayor and members of the council, the use that for the property as the business is a conditional use. Without the approval, then it's not permitted, and if it's not a permitted use, then it can't be used for that business.
And when would that, so
Oh,
operationally?
you're asking for the process?
Yes.
Well, we don't have a resolution prepared at this time. We're looking for direction from the council as to what they want to do. If they are looking for revocation, we would look for direction to bring a resolution back to the next council meeting, which would be at the end of the month. It's last Monday of the month. And if it's approved by the council at that meeting, then it would be once it's approved.
And then, if it's approved, does that mean the business shuts down the next day?
If it is, unless there's a different direction from the council with regards to how they want that to happen, once the resolution's passed and it's not a permitted use, it can't be used for that use.
Yeah. So there's some discretion involved about,
There's-
well, in the sense of, Mr. Kroll, you've got 30 days to clear out. Anyway, I understand. At some point, the business would be shut down, relatively quickly, I assume.
That would be the direction of the council
Yes.
on that.
So what would that be?
I'm not
If
the.
you come back at the end of the month and you say that you're pulling your UCP, does that mean send the guys home and I clean it up? What does that mean?
I think that's what it means.
Yeah. You can't operate without it.
I just wanted to clarify that to make sure everybody understood what the consequences of doing this are. Okay, as I said, I haven't been engaged with this process as all of you have, and I would just ask that you give Kurt again a few weeks to make some progress. At the end of those few weeks, if you don't see any progress, then there's an automatic CUP revocation. But I know Kurt, I know he's committed, and I think he can make these changes. I know there's 2 or 3 of you commented that the business has outgrown the site, and he has additional space, and if he can reorganize the business and make use of that space, he can alleviate the parking problem, also implement the emergency around the building, and I think bring this into sight. I think he understands that the point where the council is. You are not really interested in delaying this indefinitely again. But I would ask for a few additional weeks to see if he can't make progress. If at that time he can't, I think it would be, like, we would understand, Kurt would understand that the council has to take action. But I'm not sure, I'm not sure Kurt understood what would happen tonight, that this might be the end of his business. And I think justice, equity, would be served to give Kurt a few weeks to consider the consequences and act, and if he doesn't, the council can take action.
Mayor, I support the theory that we need to instruct staff to begin the revocation resolution. Kurt, I'm looking directly at you. Give me a reason in 2 weeks that I can vote no for that.
I'll give you a
Give me a reason every time I drive by that there is not going to be cars out there, that the things are going to be cleaned up. I challenge you to give me a reason in 2 weeks to vote no.
That's fine. I'll give you a reason.
Clarissa? Oh, sorry.
Can you make progress in 2 weeks, Kurt?
Yes, I can make progress in 2 weeks.
But
Yeah.
Progress?
Compliance, not progress.
Compliance in 2 weeks? Cut the trees down, grade out the lot, repave everything? I don't think I can get Joe to do it in 2 weeks. He's scheduled to be in July.
How about if we start with the parking?
But here's the challenge, and we can talk circles in this tonight. And I understand COVID, but this has been pre-COVID. And you came to us in 2015, and we listened, and we compromised. In 2016, we agreed. And now here we sit in 2022 with the same issues.
Right.
And you're telling me the same thing tonight you told me in 2016, and you told me before. So, Mr. Bjorklund, I don't know if you understand that history. So it's not that we're being cold. It's not that we're being anti-business. We have tried multiple times. And as you've heard tonight, this is not easy on anyone. Or the decisions are being made lightly. So, I mean, I can give you the 2 weeks too, but if we weren't able to do it in 6
To
years,
come into full compliance in 2 weeks,
that's when our next meeting is.
and that would consist of?
Well,
The agreement written out in our CUP from 2016.
And Madam Mayor, also in the staff report lists out the items that were the conditions, and then has those items that need to be addressed, and there's been numerous letters that have also been sent to the property owner.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Lampkin. Clarissa, did you want to speak? No, you're good? Okay.
I have a question for Clarissa. Have any of the unpaid fees been paid? Have any of the fees been paid?
The first fee from last year of $500 was paid. None
None
after
since
that.
then?
You just said fees.
Okay.
I would take the lifeline.
Well, of course I'm gonna try.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tell 'em.
I will try. I'll see what I can do in 2 weeks.
I don't want to make light of the delays, but another 2 weeks, I think, is a small additional time for Kurt to take a last attempt at bringing this into compliance.
Can I ask a question? So on May 4th, you were hand-delivered a CUP violation letter from our city attorney that outlined the conditions that weren't being met. And it also said the city council had instructed staff to begin the process of a revocation hearing unless, unless you could become compliant by June 1st, June 2nd, something. We put together 30 days. And 30 days came and passed. I'm not quite sure if you've had any conversation with the attorney or Mark or Clarissa as far as what needed to be done to keep this from happening. And so here we sit in this hearing, and we're asking for more time to get compliant.
I was under the impression, which we have been cleaning up, we opened up the fire lane, we moved quite a few cars out of there. I had my asphalt guy, Joe Jones, come over, give us bids, nail him down to a time. I said, when can you do this? This is important to get this done sooner than later. And he says, by July. I didn't realize I was supposed to communicate with what I was doing and what the process was. I assumed I had a meeting up here today to tell you everything that I'm doing. So, but maybe I was wrong, which I am. This meeting was to pull the UCP.
Which I believe in here, there was a handwritten note delivered to you stating that. When I was reading the packet, I don't remember the exact date.
Madam Mayor, at
Yes.
exhibit, excuse me, hold on a second.
23.
23, if you take, in there, the date of the letter is, when it was delivered, is May 4th, and we gave until June 1st to contact, basically to contact staff, either Clarissa or Mark, with regards to I'm in compliance, or, hey, here's my plan I'm doing right here, to get into compliance. At that point, either we could have the revocation hearing still, we continue it, or whatever, or cancel it. But we were looking for June 1st to have something provided to us, some plan. I mean, it's in the last paragraph of that letter, that notice, and there was no plan provided.
And that's where I'm struggling again. So you were
I
given
didn't.
another opportunity.
I apologize, I didn't take it that way. I thought, start the ball rolling, getting things organized and cleaned up, and come up here and tell you what we're trying to do.
Our hope was not to get to this point tonight.
I
So
understand.
no.
that now. As I'm standing here, I do understand that now.
I think
Right.
you all know that Kurt is a very good businessman, but like a lot of businessmen, he may not pay attention to administrative and, regulatory matters as much as he should, and that's not to say that they should be ignored. I am a banking attorney, and you don't ignore the government. And all I can say is, he hasn't had someone like me looking over his shoulder, and I will do my best, for what it's worth, over the next 2 weeks to make sure he's paying attention to the requirements of the CUP and puts the rest of his business behind as a secondary matter. I think Kurt understands the consequences now a little better of not obeying to the letter the terms of the CUP, and I'll do my best to make sure he keeps that in mind.
So Councilmember DeLuca had proposed going forward with the revocation process and having staff direct that, which we can do, and then that can come before us in 2 weeks, and we can make a decision then. Just because we draft it does not necessarily mean that we would approve it at the 27th, so you would have those 2 weeks, is that correct? If it's,
Correct.
Okay.
If you give us direction to draft the resolution, we'll have a resolution ready for the next meeting. That's the plan. And at that time, you can take consideration with regards to what it is at that point you want to do, whether you want to adopt it, modify it, table it, however you want to do, but the motion will be in front of you. I'm sorry, the resolution will be in front of you.
Okay. All right, so just for clarity on that.
So that would give Mr. Kroll 2
2
weeks
weeks.
to come into compliance. Or a good faith